Are we ready? I think we're ready. We did it, my friends. Kash Patel is in the house, and congratulations to Kash. Congratulations to America. We're going to see some serious reform, and we're excited about that. So this was a meme that you can see came over from Dr. Fanzer and Mad Liberals on X. And Dan Scavino from the White House posted that one today. So lots of excitement out there for Kash Patel, yours truly, and I know many of us here as well. So Dan Scavino said, congratulations to the new director of the FBI. We're very excited about this. Couple of quick highlights on this before we jump into the other business on the day. We'll see what the Democrats said about Kash. I got a bunch of little excerpts from them that we'll just see as we rub this one in for sure. But we've got some other legal business to attend to because there were some serious filings out there in the District of Columbia. You can see this one here from Amir Ali. This was a case that we were covering. And now the liberals, the people who brought this lawsuit, are asking for contempt. Okay, they want the Trump administration to be held in contempt. They want sanctions and civil penalties because, as we learned yesterday, they're continuing to cut things using independent power, using independent sources. We know that the Democrats said you can't use your new executive orders or you can't use your new state memos and so on. But Trump is saying, fine, we won't use that as our source of power, as our decision-making basis, and we'll find something else. They did, and yesterday we spent some time reading through it. It was brilliant, explaining all of the other regulations that apply, that allow them to cancel these contracts, including the contracts themselves. So what happened is the left came, they filed this last night, or right after we saw the other motion filed, an emergency motion for contempt. Okay, they're saying that the Trump administration should be penalized, and this is going to a very liberal judge called Amir H. Ali. So we'll go through that. We'll see what the latest is and piece together what's happening because the Trump administration did respond to this. This is their response saying, don't even think about holding us in contempt. We have the right to do this. And so we'll see what the DOJ said there. Some great clips. We had Stephen Miller over at the White House come out today for a press briefing and once again explain to the media how the American Constitution works and how the president governs the country. And then we'll turn our attention to what's happening here with the calls for impeachment. We've got Representative Eli Crane, who now has an impeachment resolution drafted up. He says he'll be filing this officially tomorrow in Congress. You're going, whoa. So we've got impeachments afoot. We'll see if there is going to be any momentum around this. We'll talk about it. But there is also simultaneously an appeal that's happening. So Trump got ordered to bring this woman back in. We've been covering this. Okay, the judges are saying Trump cannot fire people from his own executive branch, and you have to keep these hacks back in office. And so Kathy Harris, just like Hampton Dellinger, the Hunter Biden law school colleague, just like he got weaseled back in, another District of Columbia judge came out and shoved Kathy Harris back in there. Probably no relation to Kamala, but shoved her back in there. And now Trump is appealing that. So this one's going to the Court of Appeals. They've got their notice of appeal that we'll go through. And then we've got some reaction from more of the press briefing today because Caroline Leavitt came out and said Trump and the Trump administration is off to a great start. And we're going to solve a lot of these spending problems once we cut spending, which is what we're doing right now. So the big news on the day, of course, is Kash Patel. And here is what it sounded like officially as he got sworn in today, or not sworn in yet, but he got confirmed by the Senate officially today.
The yeas are 51. The nays are 49. The confirmation is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the president will be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Yeah, baby. It's official. All right. So 51 to 49. And Mitch McConnell is somebody who voted this time, actually, for a Trump nominee. He didn't vote for Tulsi. He didn't vote for Hegseth. And I don't think he voted for RFK Jr. So finally, Mitch McConnell, who's on his way out, we can be nicer to him now because he's not going to be running anything anymore. So All right, goodbye, Mitch. So we saw that this morning on our members only stream. It was a lot of fun. But just a quick smattering of this. I just want to show you what else is happening out there, because before this took place, the Democrats came out and they got a whole sign made up and everything. Okay, there were 5 of them, these dorks standing out there alone. They actually posted this. Like, this is a great image. This is great. Post that on X. These 5 dorks standing around. We were making fun of Adam Schiff this morning. Look how cold he looks. He's like, put another jacket on me. I'm friggin' freezing out here. It's going to be a lot colder in prison, bro. But anyways, so Durbin said at FBI headquarters, we're here on the day that Senate Republicans are going to vote on KASH. We stand outside because he plans to shut it down and reopen it as a museum of the deep state. Hell yeah, baby. That's what we're talking about. They said it's bizarre. I don't know what they're, it sounds amazing to me. This building is old and antiquated, and it has a crook as the prior director called J. Edgar Hoover. His name is on the building. It's time to retire it. It should be a museum of the deep state. So anyways, they were out there, totally failed. Nice job, guys. You got all bundled up for nothing. But they were also screaming about this on the floor of the Senate today. Amy Klobuchar went through and she was talking about Bill Barr. All right. So Bill Barr doesn't like KASH either. Gina Haspel doesn't like KASH either. And guess who? John Bolton. She called them Republicans of integrity. So she is going to be upset once they start looking into her prospective criminality. And sex freak Hirono was also out here today, all pounding the table at the last minute. Of course, we don't need to actually listen to these people. But she said he's totally unfit. Says ours is a nation of laws, blah, blah, blah. So she lost today as well. And then we had the racist White House, whose wife belongs to a racist White House club in Connecticut, I believe, and says Kash Patel will cause evil in this building behind us. Okay, so they're all freaked out for good reason because we think that they are criminals. Here's frozen pencil neck Schiff. His neck's going to break like a icicle, but he's out there also freaked about it. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi is sending great congratulations to KASH, saying congratulations to my good friend. He's extremely passionate about restoring the reputation of the FBI, and I look forward to working closely with him to end violent crime, protect our national security, and to make America safe again. And this is a good notice also. They're making new accounts. So this morning I was like frustrated on our member stream. I was saying, what the heck? I thought I already followed Doug Burgum. And turns out, I think it was a new account. That's why I hadn't followed it yet. So they now have FBI Director KASH, right? So it's a brand new account. So make sure you're giving that a follow. He just posted this. He says, I am honored to be confirmed as the 9th director of the FBI. Says, thank you to President Trump and Attorney General Bondi for your unwavering confidence and support. The FBI has a storied legacy, from the G-men to safeguarding our nation in the wake of 9/11. The American people deserve an FBI that is transparent, accountable, and committed to justice. The politicization of our justice system has eroded public trust, but that ends today. My mission as director is clear. Let good cops be cops and rebuild trust in the FBI. Working alongside the dedicated men and women of the Bureau and our partners, we will rebuild an FBI the American people can be proud of. And to those who seek to harm Americans, consider this your warning. We will hunt you down in every corner of this planet. Mission first, America always. Let's get to work. Kash Patel is now going to be sworn in with haste and will be at the seat as the director of the FBI. We're excited for it. All right, so let's turn our attention to some legal filings because we've got an interesting battle afoot that's happening in the District of Columbia, starting now with this case, telling us Democrats now demanding Trump be sanctioned and his administration be held in contempt. They filed this in the District of Columbia, which, of course, as we know, is a very blue district with very blue judges, and they asked the court for an emergency motion. They said, hey, judge, we need you to restrain the Trump administration, in this case, Marco Rubio and the State Department, and hold them in civil contempt. And the backstory on this, before we dive in, is that Trump notified them yesterday that we're continuing to make cuts at the State Department. Remember, the judge came out and issued a TRO, a temporary restraining order that said, reinstate all the funding for all these NGOs, the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition et al., and a bunch of others. Turn their money back on, said the judge, unless, they said, you can find essentially some other reason why you can cancel it that's not based on Trump's executive order. So in other words, the current basis for canceling these things is off limits. But if you have another reason for it, you can use that other reason. So Trump notified them yesterday, and we read that. It was a beautiful filing. Said here, this is the declaration of Pete Morocco. Just as a quick recap, he says, look, we've cut a ton of stuff. And all of these little parenthetical notes and are citations, right? And he's referencing what he's allowed to do. So this is Trump's executive order. He said that gave me a basis to do a bunch of things, but I don't really need that. We have this one, automatic directive system is what we can use. And this one here, and we can terminate awards using these regulations. And we can terminate a contract here for our convenience using this regulation. And here's another one, and another one, and another one. And so using all of those independent statutes that have nothing to do with President Trump's most recent administration at all, they've all already been in operation. He can use those, and they've done it. They said, okay, great. Thanks, Judge. So thanks for allowing us to have that exception. Your TRO has no teeth to it. It is meaningless, essentially, because we have other avenues. They've terminated a bunch of contracts, 498 contracts there. And as we saw yesterday, a lot, all right, a lot has been nuked. DEI awards, unnecessary consultants, unrelated items, civic society, democracy promotion. Okay, all these are code words for Democrat grift and more. And they've cut and cut and cut. Don't want to spend a ton of time on this because we read through the whole thing yesterday, but everything got cut. So what happened is then they filed this emergency motion. Your Honor, they're not abiding with your temporary restraining order. You told them to turn the money back on so that we can continue our grift, and they're not doing it. They've identified independent sources. Please stop them and hold them in contempt. Here's what they say. Now, Trump's DOJ responded to this. So we're going to take a quick look at their filing and their whining, and then we'll see what the DOJ said in response to put them back in their place. But here's their filing. All right, Your Honor, whining lefty groups, without warning several weeks ago, without any justification that we need to explain ourselves to them, right, is what they're saying, says Trump abruptly cut off funding to thousands of foreign assistance programs on which communities throughout the world rely for their health and safety, and ordered those programs to stop their work. So then on February 13th, just a week ago, having determined that the liberals met their burden for relief, the court, this blue judge appointed by, I think, Obama, or a Democrat, issued a temporary restraining order. And they said, you are stopped from suspension of the aid. So turn the money back on. You are stopped from issuing any firings, suspensions, or stop work orders, and they must be ordered to effectuate the judge's ruling. So turn the money back on. Now, conveniently, they left out all of the little other exception words. That is saying that if Trump can identify another basis for doing what he did, then it's fine. So the judge said, they tell us, this court ordered them to file a report. And guess what? They've done that. Now, meanwhile, us, say the liberal groups, along with countless other recipients, even though you told them to turn it back on, we continued without funding as we waited for Trump to comply with the unambiguous language of your order. You said, give us money. He didn't give us money. Each day, our clients' harm is increasing and the suffering of millions of people across the world who are depending on this money. Deaths have already been attributed directly to Trump. Footnote 1. Sarah Newey said U.S. aid freeze claims first victim as oxygen supplies cut off. Yeah. So somebody just suffocated to death out there without oxygen. Terrible. Well, on February 18th, nearly at midnight, defendants filed the status report ordered by this court. The report makes the remarkable assertion. So Trump people said, all right, here you go. Nearly at midnight, they got that one squeezed in, says that Trump, they say, Your Honor, they're telling us Trump is claiming that he reviewed thousands of affected State Department contracts, grants, and agreements. Because yesterday, that's what they said. Oh, well, you said, Your Honor, if we found a reason to cancel it in the contract and we're not relying on Trump's executive order, we can do that. So, okay, cool. They went, looked at about, a couple thousand, no problem at all. Stayed up late. had some extra caffeinated beverages, and got to it. They got through it all. Everything's canceled. Thanks, Judge. So despite the court's unambiguous order, they say they terminated everything. And they say that their terminations were legal. You said turn it on. They turned it off and they doubled down. They said this court should not brook such brazen defiance of the express term of its order. Judge, you said give us our money back. They're not doing it. They're busted. Ground them. The court should order Trump and the State Department to immediately comply today. Wow, they're mad. With the terms of the order by revoking and rescinding the suspensions and turning our money on. It's our money. I need it now. It should also order Trump to immediately reimburse everybody for the work. And the court should issue an order finding Trump and Rubio in civil contempt and imposing specific penalties until they comply with the order. So give us all of our money. And if they don't give us our money, penalize them with more fines that we'll collect for not giving us the money. These are the most ingrateful people. It's like we're entitled to this, America. They're telling every one of us they demand our money and our support. We elected via our own votes a new administration. They made decisions on our behalf. Their decision is to cut you off. The fact that you're here demanding to continue to be grifted and expensed by us is an insult. And now they're saying that the government should be penalized for not turning their money back on fast enough. Insulting. Now, here's the factual background, they say. So these are the liberal groups. They say, this court, and the order was unambiguous. It said Rubio and the rest of them cannot enforce the sections of the memo, right? Okay, that's fine. We agree. And executive order, including by suspending or any of these other things. Now, the court also said it would be overbroad to stop them from going through the contracts. Okay, so now they finally included that. You did say you could look at the contracts, right? The judge said that. It would be overbroad. I can't stop them from looking at the contracts. So they did that. Trump's team, they focused on that sentence. That's what lawyers do. Hello. Says that Trump suggests that they're in compliance with this order. Right? They can't believe it. They're incredulous. It's hilarious. Because they have, in the last 5 days, conducted an internal review of the thousands of grants and contracts and cooperative agreements that we had. And they went through thousands of them, Judge, and they made en masse suspensions. They fired everybody. They say that it was consistent with every contract. They say this assertion strains credulity. There's no way they went through all of these and canceled all of them. It's also contradicted by accounts from within the government, which show that Trump and his actions have lacked and continue to lack a reasoned basis. Give me a break. We got plenty of reasonable bases for doing what we're doing. You just don't like it. So they got some random reports. So it's exactly right? They said, no, okay, well, it's going to be a late night, fellas. We're reading contracts tonight. Does it? And it's not going to be that hard, right? Does it have a Section G in there? Yeah. Okay. Well, they're all standard forms, right? Yeah. Did they all sign Section G? Section G say we have the right to cancel? Great. So check it. Section G, open it up, G, open it up, G, open it up, G, open up, G, open. Okay, got it. Perfect. It's all there. Canceled. Perfect. Now, defendants' representation, they say, Your Honor, they tell us, they just cannot believe it that they actually looked at the contracts, but they did. And they affirmed that they did. They say that they had begun with the analysis of thousands of contracts. And they said that they all complied with their terminations. They said a large share of them were allowed, that we could cancel these. They say the review is ongoing. We're going to cancel more. So just sit there and read it and wait for it. Meanwhile, they said on February 15th, Trump appeared to flout his obligation. And he posted this True Social on Truth. He said, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." The trolls from the White House just abound. They can't even realize when they're being trolled. They're like, I'm going to cite that in our brief. Okay, great job. Great. Did you footnoted that? Oh, good. You linked to it. Good job. Well done. Says here, and this judge is like, oh my gosh. Amir Ali. He's like, wow, he did say that. This is a dictatorship. So we're going to just take over the executive branch. It's probably where this will go. We'll see. Now, following the issuance of the TRO, the judge said, you're stopped from doing these things, right? You're restrained. Then they reached out to the partner. So they're like, oh gosh, the lawyers went back to the AIDS kids and they said, hey, guess what, AIDS kids, which is like a bunch of Stacey Abrams all taking billions of dollars for their campaigns. So they reached out to their partners at USAID about the implementation. So everybody contacted the State Department, like, hey, our money, where's our money? Turn it back on. We have an order. The State Department said, well, I don't have any money for you. What do you want? A USAID agreement officer responded to AVAC's inquiry. They said, thank you for your email. The agency has not provided guidance, so I'll let you know. And replying to an email, the State Department grants officer also stated, says, I'm sorry, the suspension remains in effect on your money. And new costs by you should not be incurred unless you receive a notification from your grants officer that the suspension has been lifted. Otherwise, we are awaiting further guidance from our leadership. We'll let you know as soon as we receive additional information. Third declaration of somebody called Andrew Sullivan. Now, similarly, a contracting officer within the USAID advice said all work must remain suspended until a formal authorization is granted in writing. At this time, we have not issued any directive to rescind the stop work order. So please hold off until you receive formal notification to continue. They're like, well, somebody should have turned the money back. Where's our money? Everybody's getting emailed. So another contracting officer called Jessica Doe explains, don't know if that's her real name, says it was not until February 17th, 4 days after the court's order, that Jamie Rogers, USAID senior procurement executive, issued any guidance about that at all. And I'm trying to think about what day that was. So February 17th. So that would have been earlier this week on a Monday, right? Says issued any executive guidance about that. Now, at that time, he stated that the USAID leadership was in the process of developing a comprehensive review process and that they're going to go through and investigate all of the contracts, grants, and awards. Now, contracting officers sought clarification, but they didn't get it. So then declarant Jessica Doe, probably a pseudonym, says has not personally seen any evidence. So she's like, well, I didn't see them stay up late and review those contracts. I haven't seen a case-by-case analysis. So they didn't actually do it. Like, yeah, we did. We just didn't invite you, Jessica. Defendants, they say, are still terminating the awards. Your Honor, they're still canceling things. This company, American Foreign Services Association, tell a story of what happened. This person called Thomasina Doe, so another name, says a member of the acquisition and assistance workforce got an email saying on February 6th, terminating 800 awards. You're all done. The instruction did not come from an authorized procurement official, didn't give them any rationale. That email was rescinded. Then Virginia Doe, another person, corroborates, said we were all told to terminate when we raise legal concerns. They're dismissed. And we are told to terminate insubordinates or something. Nothing meaningful changed, Your Honor. You gave them an order and they're not following it. Jessica, says that there's no case-by-case basis, and no case-by-case basis has taken place. So they're not following your order. And so they're going to give us some of their legal basis. They say, look, here's the argument. It is a basic proposition that people must follow the orders of the courts. Here, Trump is in plain violation of this. They say that even though the TRO did not prohibit enforcement of contracts, right? And they're all saying we just canceled them under the contracts. For the most part, they say we're allowed to do that. But in reality, they say, Your Honor, this is just an excuse. It's a continuation of their mass terminations and suspensions. They don't have independent authorities outside of the scope of the TRO. In other words, they say they can only do this if they rely on Trump's EO. They're saying, no, we got plenty of other sources. And as we just showed you in the declaration, there's plenty of them. They say their justification for continuing to suspend these funds is a sheer pretext. They claim that in keeping place all actions covered by the TRO, they're like, we're not using the order, so we're not defying this court's order. We're merely implementing the results of the analysis that was already underway. We just looked at the contracts and we can cancel them. Now, coincidentally, they say, this review process said we can cancel everything. Which I would imagine because they probably use very standard contracts, very similar process. They don't write unique contracts for every grifting Democrat. That's a lot of work. They just want to rubber stamp these things. They say that the State Department contracts and a large share of these things were all allowed. So we just looked at the contracts, we could cancel them. But they say they're mad, man. This is preposterous to suggest that the Trump administration were able, look, it's like you didn't have enough time to do your homework here. Between 9:46 p.m. on February 13th, when this court issued its TRO, and 11:32 on the 18th, to make individualized determinations as to thousands of contracts. They couldn't do that in 5 days. What? You're used to dealing with government bureaucrats. Hello, this is a whole new game in town. Elon could have built like 3 rocket ships in that time. And sworn statements of contracting officers reveal no such determinations took place. Okay, nobody cares about Jessica Doe. She wasn't invited to the cancellation party, all right? She's mad about it. In reality, prior to the issuance of the TRO, Trump suspended payments to nearly all contracts and actions, and they have not rescinded that since you told them to rescind it. And this has sent a shockwave across organizations. This blanket suspension is nearly entirely in place, and their claim that they are waiving certain things for humanitarian work, life-saving things in PEPFAR is misleading. They're not giving us the waivers that we want. And in another case, they're claiming that they're just trying to root out fraud. But this is brazen, across the board stop and freezes. They couldn't even look for fraud. Now they're just trying to defend their noncompliance. And third, they threaten you, Judge, the liberals are whining to the court, if this court determines that suspensions of, look at this, 6,800 grants to be unlawful. And I just want to point this out. I've noticed there are some people out there that seem to be like internal or friendly saboteurs almost. They post things on there, and I can't think of anybody specifically or I'd say it, but I just kind of see it. It's mostly, non-friendly accounts, but they'll say things like Trump's not actually cutting anything, right? They'll make these news stories and post like that. Like, oh, it's there's a bunch of just topical surface layer stuff. It's all smoke and mirrors. You can just see the numbers here. 6,800 grants. It's like an insane amount of numbers. So and they're so mad about it. You can just feel it, right? That there is, it's like when they blew up that planet in Star Wars or something, except that liberal planet was, not worth it. Anyways, but we don't want to blow up, liberal planets. That's not what I'm saying. But we do understand they're screeching out like 1,000 voices into the night or whatever that phrase was. So, anyways, this court should not allow them to threaten their way to non-compliance, saying that if, Your Honor, if you say we can't go through these on a case-by-case basis, we're going to have no choice but to terminate the awards, even if the ongoing review says that they should continue. So like if you say we can't cancel these things, we're going to cancel more. And it's going to cost a lot to restart the awards. And this is terrible. So exhibiting considerable audacity, how dare they do this? Their request, they're letting you know that they're canceling these things. And in addition, they want us to pay an injunction bond. Rule 65C authorizes the court to order a security bond, okay? Because let's say, for example, that they have to turn the money back on. Trump says, well, we're giving money to fraudulent entities. Then they prove it. How are they going to get that money back, right? Now the people, the country is harmed because all that money got stolen by the fraudsters. But they would rather have the spigots on and you deal with the fraud in the aftermath versus just cutting the money off and just making sure it's not fraudulent going out. So if we do determine that it's fraud, we want these doctors to pay for it. So make them pay for any damages if we turn out to be right. And there were some monies that were dispersed that shouldn't have been dispersed. So we asked for an injunction bond. They say the court has broad discretion to do this. And the court may take into consideration their ability to post a bond. They're like, well, we don't have billions of dollars. We want billions from them, but we don't have billions to put up for it. We just want free money with no skin in the game. They say here, this is not warranted. Requiring Trump to lift their funding freeze will not cause them to incur costs and damages. Obviously it will, but they say it's not within the scope of the rule. And second, Your Honor, we're nonprofit organizations, and we won't be able to post a bond to cover the amount of federal foreign assistance awards. Obviously, it's billions of dollars. Indeed, the suspension of those awards has caused plaintiffs to lay off employees and cease their operations. So we don't have the money. So we just want you, America, to put up the funds to continue their possibly fraudulent operation and not give us any operation or operability to recoup those costs. But this court doesn't require payment. So just make them turn the money back on. They say also, Your Honor, this is unlawful. So they're going to ask for sanctions. They say, as was clear at the time, When we filed our motion for a TRO, things are clearer now. Their wholesale termination and suspension flouts the separation of powers, which is obviously ridiculous. Them saying that Trump cannot do this and having the judiciary encroach is a violation of the separation of powers. And they reference the Impoundment Control Act, which is unconstitutional and is just U.S. code. It's not a constitutional amendment. It's U.S. code passed by Congress because they were mad at Nixon. Deferrals may not be made and many presidents have impounded funds throughout the history of America. So deferrals may not be made for policy reasons, and rescissions are subject to congressional approval. Yeah, but these aren't rescissions exactly, right? The money is still there. He's just downsizing. All right, anyways. So with respect to the grants and contracts at issue here, however, we have made clear, defendants have made clear, they have no intention of spending the most or all funds specifically appropriated by Congress. And by the way, I think that they will spend a lot of this money. They're just not going to spend it via these mechanisms. In fact, the State Department has described the fund on freezing as saving taxpayers' money. It is, because it's not like we're saving maybe dollar for dollar, but we're going to have a much higher ROI since we're not spending money on foreign affairs. We're spending money on American affairs. It's going to American interests. That's the savings. Neither our Constitution nor the Impoundment Control Act, which is unconstitutional, allows Trump to refuse to spend the funds lawfully appropriated. He is not a delivery driver for Congress. He doesn't have to spend money on transgender surgeries in the Sub-Sahara. Civil contempt is appropriate. Judge, sanction Trump. Both conditions are present. There was a reasonably clear and specific order, and he violated that. You were clear, Judge. And the scale of the harm is enormous, and it's going to increase. We've made a strong showing that there's irreparable harm, and the court has been clear that we're likely to succeed. Now, no aspect of the policies have been implemented, and now our programs are being shuttered. You issued, Judge, an unambiguous order stopping Rubio and the Trump administration from cutting off U.S. aid. You said they can't rely on their executive order or the state memo and turn the money back on. But they chose to violate this order. And by their own admission, they're continuing to suspend funds, and they are enforcing virtually every single termination and suspension and stop work order. This court has no discretion to overlook a proven violation, and there's no defense to this. They are subject to your order. They've acted contemptuously, to the court, and they should be held in contempt. And this is a very blue judge in a very blue district. Accordingly, who's going to be sympathetic to this argument, even though it's nuts. Now, accordingly, the court should issue, as we'll see from the DOJ in a minute, the court should issue an order directing them, give us our money, comply with the terms of the TRO, rescind all of your suspensions, and turn the floodgates back on. Immediately company with the terms of the TRO, maybe comply, that's how mad they are. Immediately comply with the terms of the TRO by taking all steps necessary to reimburse foreign recipients and stop Trump from issuing any new suspensions or stop work orders unless the court permits that after considering a particularized case-by-case basis for such suspensions. And they've already affirmed and avowed previously in this declaration signed here by Pete Morocco that they've done that. And the government is entitled to a presumption of regularity. It should order the court should order that Trump be held in civil contempt and order penalties until Rubio and the State Department purge themselves of this contempt of court and pay them money because they're mad that they're not getting money. You know who pays for that? All of us. So the U.S. Aid Coalition cares more about their money than about the future of America. Great. Now, for the reasons above, they say, order them to turn the money back on. Order them to take all steps to actually disperse the funds. Order them to be held in civil contempt, specifically the agency, Marco Rubio, and Peter Morocco. All three of those specifically, of course, that routes up to Trump, who is ordering all of this. Signed here by counsel for the plaintiffs at the Public Citizen Litigation Group, Lauren Bateman, Allison Zeeve, Nicholas Sansone, all demanding that the president and his administration be sanctioned by the court. So the Trump DOJ has responded to this. And here's what they say. Responding in the District of Columbia to the AIDS doctors' demand for a contempt finding against the Trump administration, Trump's DOJ responds as follows and tells us, look, Your Honor, this court should deny these doctors' whiny emergency motion. They seek to enforce the terms of a temporary restraining order that they wish the court had entered, but didn't. They are trying to tax our time and resources while they are preparing an opposition to another motion down the line. Now, they make no attempt to even explain how we violated the text of your order, nor could they, because that order clearly, Your Honor, and unambiguously authorizes Trump and our administration to enforce their rights under contracts. And that means we can terminate them. Now, they make no attempt to argue that their agreements did not include a termination clause, right? They didn't come out and say that the contracts didn't have those, or that the actions taken to terminate those agreements were inconsistent with something. No. Nor have we identified any foreign specific aid that should have been distributed pursuant to your order. So we've done our part. We're following your order explicitly. The fact that you're unhappy with how it was written is your problem, not ours. Now, these AIDS doctors' motion, albeit cloaked in contempt styling, in effect seeks reconsideration of your restraining order. Okay, they're asking for sanctions against us, but what they really want is for you to change what you wrote, which you didn't write. They want you to inappropriately expand the reach of the order, to intrude into contracts and grants, to say we can't even abide by our own contracts. We're prohibited from complying with our own contracts. While acknowledging that the TRO permitted those very exercise of rights, so we could do this, they now seek to hold us in contempt. You're saying we did something bad, even though the judge said we could do it, and you admit he said we could do it. And they didn't even provide their own contract or grants for review. Oh, that is brutal and savage. I love it. You know, Judge, they could have just shown you their contracts and explained how it cannot be canceled. But we looked at the contracts from them and canceled it. They didn't show you theirs at all. They also do not dispute the temporary restraining orders inapplicability to the exercise of statutory, regulatory, and authorities independent of the executive order. Okay, so we've got statutes, we've got regulations, we've got other authority, other laws that we can use. Instead, these AIDS doctors, they attempt to establish Trump's purported contempt based primarily on some pseudo-anonymous declaration, Jessica Doe, nobody cares about, that mostly discusses allegations predating the temporary restraining order. Like she's saying things that happened before you said we couldn't do anything. So it's totally irrelevant based on the timeline. Now, in addition, they are trying to hold the State Department and USAID in contempt. They're also asking you to hold the OMB in contempt. They do so without articulating any basis whatsoever. They're just mad. This court should deny their emergency motion and remind these AIDS doctors not to accuse anyone of contempt where they have not come close to submitting clear and convincing evidence that an unambiguous order has been violated. Punks. So they continue. Look, Judge, these AIDS doctors are two nonprofit organizations, okay? They get federal money to perform foreign assistance work. Now, they're claiming here that under the APA and under the U.S. Constitution, they're challenging the executive order. The executive order said it's a 90-day pause to slow the spread of corruption. And that's all. Consistent with the order, Rubio canceled the funds. So then they sued. 2 days later, after they sued, the court, you judge, set a hearing to begin less than 3 hours after notice in a parallel case happened as well. After that hearing was set, and more than 2 weeks after the executive order, they then filed, in this case, a motion for a TRO. They filed in another case, Global Health Council. There's two groups of AIDS doctors. They consolidated the cases here. And we got less than 2 hours before the hearing on that one began. So we hardly show up, hardly prepare. You're basically blindsided. The judge says, well, you're not prepared. The other team's totally prepared. It's a surprise attack, and they get the victory. Now, their motion sought to stop us from implementing the executive order and any other subsequent memos. Then we had a hearing. Then they revised their order. They narrowed the scope of their relief. So then on February 13th, the court entered a TRO, restrained them, right, from exercising these sections. The judge was very specific. Here's the order. It says you can't do these things. 1, 5, 7, 8, 9, or use the memo that Rubio signed. But it says, or issuing, here, let's read it. In so ruling, here, they just highlight it for us, so we don't have to read it twice. In so ruling, the court acknowledged defendants' representation that some contracts at issue may include terms that allow them to be modified or terminated in certain circumstances. Saying, the court concluded it would be overbroad to stop Trump from taking actions on those contract terms or terminating them pursuant to contractual provisions. Okay, referencing the ruling, right? All of these ids are referring this right back up to the court. Judge, you said that. So you included a specific provision addressing our conduct when you ordered, you said, quote, that nothing in this order shall prohibit the defendants, Trump, from enforcing the terms of grants or contracts. You wrote it. It's all in your order. Okay, it's very clear. They didn't want to talk about that, but we do. Now, on February 18th, the court issued the TRO before that. Then we issued a status report. We read through the full thing yesterday. That filing is accompanied by the declaration of Peter Morocco. And we explained that they had worked diligently to comply with the TRO. We did it during the 2 business days and the 3-day holiday weekend that had passed. You issued the TRO. We worked our cabooses off for 5 days straight. Elon moved beds in there. Defendants detailed their significant efforts to provide notice of the TRO as required by it to grantees or contractors whose award may be affected by the TRO. It was 2 business days and a 3-day holiday weekend. And right, Monday was President's Day, right? So they were working their butts off. Defendants also provided their own contract officers and agreement officers a notice to advise them that TRO is in effect and they should no longer pause payments. So everyone got the memo, Judge. We did comply, but we were doing multiple things at the same time. We were racing to cancel as much as we could. So we also explained, among other compliance efforts, we were doing everything to comply, that the State Department and USAID had already begun to analyze thousands of grants and contracts, which was taken during the almost 4 weeks between the issuance of the executive order and the court's order. Okay, so as soon as Trump issued the order, they started reviewing the contracts. Then the judge said, well, turn the contracts back on. They started the process, but they finished the work. They busted their butts for 5 days, finished it, canceled everything, and relied on the court's order to do it. We got to look at the contract. So before we start handing out all this money, let's cancel. Can we say thank you to these people who worked their butts off to do that on a holiday 3-day weekend? As noted, that analysis confirmed that substantially all of the terminations were allowed under the terms of the instruments. And if they weren't allowed under the terms of the instruments, why didn't these AIDS doctors bring us their contracts and show us that? Moreover, with respect to the State Department contracts, grants, and other cooperative agreements, we're allowed to do this. Now, we further explained this, Judge. We've already been clear. They're asking for contempt. It's ridiculous. We explained. You said in your order, nothing in this order stops us from enforcing contracts. We may terminate or suspend anything if we rely on those terms implicitly incorporated in those instruments. Now, although the court's order permits Trump to exercise these rights, we brought this point to the court's attention. We even told you, Judge, out of an abundance of caution, and we asked you to correct the record if our understanding is incorrect. Okay, so we told you what we're doing. Now, notwithstanding our good faith and transparency in disclosing this, and even requesting for clarification if we're wrong, the day after we filed this report, and without even conferring with us, these AIDS doctors have a bad attitude, without even having the courtesy of reaching out to opposing counsel, which is standard and customary, they say that these AIDS doctors filed an emergency motion and they want to put us in contempt. Now, that motion lacks any merit for the reasons below. We know that we have to follow orders. Civil contempt is a pretty serious penalty. We only have to impose that if it's a clear and unambiguous violation of an order, and it's a remedial device that can be used. But they haven't shown that there was any need for this. They have not shown any violation. Not only have they failed to carry their burden, we have complied with the order. There is no violation here. They do not question that the Department of State and USAID sent notices to contracting and grant parties as required by the court. We did that. They're not even saying we didn't. Nor do they dispute that we've directed our workers to investigate and follow these directives. And their pseudo-anonymous Jessica Doe can't even confirm this, confirms this. So then they say, with all of that, that we have violated the TRO by not taking additional action with grants. But they acknowledge that the TRO says we can do these things under the contract. So what the hell are they complaining about? And while they summarily assert that our conduct cannot be excused as an application, they say, you don't have any independent authority to do this. They don't dispute the independent authorities. They're not saying that doesn't give you the power to do it. They're just saying they don't believe that we actually reviewed the contracts. So they can't challenge our interpretation of the TRO because it's right, Judge. You were very clear. We can do it. So they seek reconsideration. They want you to change it because they can't argue against it. So then they propose contempt because they're whiny babies. That's all they have left. They want you to rewrite the TRO and strip out references to the order, saying we have to turn all the money back on. And this would require the judge to invalidate all of the other statutes, which he's not going to do. Plaintiffs also asked the court to strike the exception that permits the government to exercise its rights under the contracts, essentially to rewrite the agreements to which they agreed themselves. Now they ask the court to order and rescind all of these things. They want the money. Whatever the justification, they just want the money. They're effectively asking you, Judge, to place the Department of State and USAID in receivership with the court, allowing changes to the thousands of contracts these agencies manage only if the court permits us to do that. The court would be in charge of USAID. They'd have to go through case-by-case bases, and then the judge would be the person who makes the decision at every turn. But the plaintiffs, the doctors, the AIDS doctors, do not even attempt to show the inapplicability of the TRO's contracts enforcement clause, again, which on its face allows us to enforce the term of the contracts or grants. The judge said it himself. One AIDS doctor group avers that it is a party to a cooperative agreement with USAID. They were going to get money to fund a biomedical research project for AIDS vaccine advocacy. No thanks. We don't want your biomedical research projects with your AIDS spike viruses. But it has not submitted that agreement to the court for review. Why not? Nor does the AIDS group claim that its agreement did not permit the action that we took. They're not saying that our contract says you can't cancel it. They're silent about the terms of their agreement. Instead, the documents submitted by them suggest the suspension of the agreement was consistent with independent authority and standard terms in our standard agreements. It's a template. The USAID letter attached to their motion shows that their agreement was suspended, not even in a court. This is great. So they actually have their contract, right, which makes sense. But they say your suspension is pursuant to the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 700.14. And it's also ADS Chapter 303 MAB Section M10. We can cancel it using that and cancel it using that. Notice, neither one of these citations are Trump's executive order, are Marco Rubio's memo. We canceled using different authority. The cited regulation permits us to do that, saying we can suspend or terminate a program if at any time USAID determines that the continuation of all or part of the funding for a program would not be in the national interest of the United States. Boom, there it is. Catch-all provision. Thank you, bureaucrats in the federal government, for making sure that anybody can do whatever they want anytime without any consequences, because we're identifying the regulations and using those to cancel the funds. Now, the AIDS doctors and their submission does not even cite that authority, let alone attempt to explain why it does not apply or what provision of its agreement is violated by the conduct. Now, more AIDS doctors describe itself as a recipient of a range of grants from the State Department, lots of contracts. But JDN does not even attempt to prove our non-compliance with the terms of those grants. If we're violating your contracts, bring it to court. We're not. It does not assert that Trump is not enforcing the terms of the contract as permitted by the TRO. They've not even submitted their instruments that govern its grants. So where's your contract? And like the other AIDS doctors, attachments to their motions appear to establish the applicability of the TRO's exception for grants and contract terms, right? So even what they're saying, we can cancel these things. Both the State Department suspension notices that they sent were suspensions in accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations. They were not relying on Trump's EO. You got canceled pursuant to different authority. You sued Trump for an authority he didn't even cancel you under. So unable to contest meaningfully that Trump has exercised their rights under the terms of the agreement and that there is legal authority independent from the executive order and the Rubio memo, they then rely on a jumble of allegations because they're so mad, including conduct that occurred before the TRO. They assert, including in the heading, that we continue to cancel terminations, issue terminations. But not one sentence in this entire section in their brief identifies a single termination against any plaintiff in this case occurring between the issuance of the TRO, the court order, and our compliance filing. So you're making these allegations like we're still canceling stuff, but nobody in this lawsuit got anything canceled, let alone a termination against any plaintiff that violated this TRO. This section of this brief misleadingly, dishonestly, attempts to substantiate a claim about our post-TRO conduct with allegations that happened prior to the TRO, right? Mom says, don't do it again. You do it again, you're in trouble. If you did it the first time, maybe you get a little leniency. Mom, well, you shouldn't have done that, but don't do it again. Next time you're in trouble. They're saying that Trump shouldn't have done the thing again by bringing up things before the order came down. Now, they principally rely on an attack on our analysis during the 2 business days and 3-day holiday weekend that separated the entry of the court's TRO and our Tuesday filing. They say, these AIDS doctors, that these Trump people could not have possibly analyzed thousands of contracts during that time because it's impossible for liberal AIDS doctors and AIDS groups to, do really any work other than just taking government money and starting LLCs. But plaintiffs ignore the relevant law and the terms of the contracts, which grant defendants Trump broad termination authorities in the contract. Many, if not most, contracts are subject to uniform termination provisions that allow the government to terminate for convenience or in the national interest. That's right. 48 CFR 52. Authorizing termination only when it's in the government's interest. That's all they need. Here's another section. 49-502, 52, and another one. 700. Say we can terminate in whole or in part if we determine that it's not in the national interest of the United States. Now, these AIDS doctors are not even challenging that. They're not suggesting these are inapplicable here. Even if they could identify isolated instruments, like if they have one contract here or there that in their view say we can't terminate this, that would be an issue resolved in contract law. But they're not going to get a TRO. We're not even relying on Trump's orders or Rubio's memo to pause any of this payment. And the TRO does not purport to turn every contract dispute into contempt. Is that what you're saying? Now, they also ignore, these AIDS doctors, the nice declaration of Mr. Peter Morocco. He declared, explaining a significant degree of case-by-case analysis of particular instruments occurred before the TRO was entered, okay? We did most of the work in the month after Trump's executive order was issued. We just wrapped it up over the holiday weekend. Given the compressed timeline associated with the TRO, we were not in a position to explain that fact to the court before the TRO was issued because you had the TRO hearing like immediately. In any event, and we acknowledge that their analysis of the instruments is ongoing, we'll admit that, but their assertions are incoherent and they're internally inconsistent. They never explain how the time since the TRO issued was insufficient for our analysis. We couldn't review all of these contracts, but it was sufficient for the additional steps that they say we were supposed to do. So they say you had plenty of time to do all of these other things, but you didn't. You did it on these things. But we did it on these things, so we didn't have to do those things, right? Is what Trump is saying. Now, in any event, they, of course, cannot overcome the reality that 3 of the 5 days preceding our report were non-working days for federal employees, and that we rely on a large number of contract and grant officers to take action on contracts and grants. So people weren't working to hand out all this money. Now they object, saying that we should have done more. They now then accuse us of making threats to you, Judge. This is ridiculous. Not so. We would never do that. Our status report to you explained that if the order were understood to permit them to exercise termination rights under contract and grant terms, but not suspension rights. So in other words, if you say we can only fire, but we can't suspend, then we're just going to fire. If we can't suspend anybody, then we know we can terminate, and we're just going to terminate. So we noted this issue. We didn't want to be surprising here, Judge. If you come back and say you can't, you suspend everything, because they want to suspend things until they have the preliminary injunction, right? So turn the money back on, but kind of keep things in a hiatus status. Then more money can go out the door. But Judge, if we have to suspend, we're just going to cancel. But we didn't threaten you. And by the way, they don't even dispute that we would be allowed to make terminations because of the contract. Like the suspension has been maybe a little bit outside of the contract. Maybe suspension is not mentioned in the contract, for example. But we can terminate. So we have some that we're suspending. But if you say we can't suspend, we're just going to terminate. So they also say that we violated the Impound Control Act. Let's see what they say about this. Now, the court did not rule on that argument in its TRO. In any event, they're wrong. The Impoundment Control Act enforces Congress's power over the purse in relation to the executive branch. It provides for enforcement by a comptroller general, someone in the legislative branch, not for private enforcement. So they don't get to sue under that claim. Thus, the statute is generally not enforceable through this type of suit. But they appear to believe that Trump has violated laws that appropriate money to agencies for certain purposes. But they do not claim that any law requires us to contract with them or any AIDS doctors, okay? If they had a demand for specific performance, in other words, that the government gives them money, they would make that claim. But the statutes don't say that. Congress appropriates the money for USAID, and there's a billion other statutes in the Code of Federal Regulations and more that say the president can rescind and cancel these things based on national interests. It's all lawful. But they say it's our money, like we need it. It's totally ridiculous. It's not in the law. Now, as the DC Circuit has explained, temporary pauses are pretty common. That's what we're doing. But if you don't want us to pause, we'll cancel. Now, the AIDS doctors, also make a mistake in relying on a declaration by some pseudo-anonymous USAID contract officer that nobody's ever heard of called Jessica. The declaration offers little new information about the conduct after the TRO. They are only talking about it before your order came down, so we can't be in trouble for that. They also allege that she recently raised a concern about the flow of funding to a specific category of contracting partners. Wow. She says she got an instruction on President's Day to comply with the order. And she says that in the 2 business days following the instruction, questions have been raised and contracting officers have been said they'll get more information. Now, the bulk of the declaration is devoted to assertions about events or transactions that came before your order. She said that before the order, we canceled awards under an executive order. But we could. The TRO did not enjoin that order. And this is not new information. Mr. Morocco already acknowledged that, said they were canceled as part of our DEI policies. And so they don't even come close to establishing any basis for contempt for anybody here. And also the OMB has complied too, but it's not enough to deny their motion that they have not articulated any basis to hold anyone in contempt. Thomas Mackin also submitted a declaration, says the OMB is not even a party to these grants. And they don't argue anything in his declaration is inaccurate. Nonetheless, they want contempt for this dude who's not even involved. Their motion, Your Honor, should be denied because we have complied with the court's order as you demanded. However, imposing the extraordinary measure of civil contempt on us would be particularly egregious because it would improperly deny Trump a meaningful opportunity to have this court consider substantial arguments concerning the deficiencies in their claims. We have not even filed a merits brief in this case yet. You ordered a hearing on February 13th with less than 3 hours notice to the parties. And at the time the hearing was noticed, the AIDS doctors had not even filed a motion for a TRO. They filed their motion less than 2 hours before the hearing began. So even assuming for the purposes of this judge that their claims were properly raised, the claims are meritless on their own terms. All of their claims arise from their receipt of foreign money under the terms of contracts, terms they don't even want to talk about. Those terms explicitly or implicitly confer authority on the agencies to cancel them. And although they have advanced constitutional claims, they miss the mark because they raise purely statutory arguments predicated on another portion of the law. And in any event, their separation of power claims fails because it's the president's power. He controls foreign affairs. They're vast and unreviewable, and their take clause argument fails because that clause cannot be used to obtain affirmative relief. Like the president doesn't have a duty to make you happy individually. Their claim for under the APA also fails. They have another adequate remedy under the law. They can sue under their contracts or go through dispute resolution mechanisms under the Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. There's a whole different mechanism for them to claim and complain about their money. But they cannot demonstrate that we've acted contrary to the law. We haven't acted arbitrary or capriciously. We haven't exceeded anybody's authority. We have the law to do this, and now they want contempt. The purpose of injunctive relief is merely to preserve the parties' positions. Given this, if you grant them contempt, you're going to put them in a better position. In light of those limitations, it would not be appropriate to grant them relief that would be the ultimate relief that they want at the end of this. They want the money, and if you freeze this, they're going to get the money. So they should be required to post a security bond. As noted, to the extent the court intended to prevent us from exercising our authorities under the law, we respectfully ask this court that this court convert its TRO into a preliminary injunction so we can appeal this right now. Stay its order pending any appeal authorized by the Solicitor General and require the AIDS doctors to post security for any taxpayer funds that are wrongfully dispersed. If we give this money out and it's fraudulent and we discover that, you're on the hook for it. This court may issue a preliminary injunction when it's basically acting like a preliminary injunction, but without any explanation. They assert that requiring us to lift the stop work order would not impose any costs or damages. That's obviously ridiculous. Requiring Trump and the American people to continue paying for contract and grant programs is literally a cost by definition. They claim they lack the resources to post a bond, but that concern only highlights the extraordinary breadth of the relief they attempt to secure for third parties, not even before the court. Parties who those claims they don't even have standing to assert. Signed by Trump's DOJ, very nice filing, Indranil Sur, who we saw file yesterday or earlier this week as well. So good stuff from the Trump administration. Also at the White House in the press briefing room was Stephen Miller explaining how a lot of this works, how the president has his executive power and how he uses it to take care, capital C, of America.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
That's right. And the judges who are interfering with that and using TROs to do extra legal estoppel, essentially, to stop the administration from executing and effecting its power is the antithesis of what the American people want. We had an election so stuff could get done, and the judges are trying to impede that. So here is an exchange from CBS's Nancy Cord. Says a lot of other people at the IRS are going to lose their jobs. What's going to happen next? Here's this exchange.
This could be for either one of you. So we reported, several other outlets have reported that about 3,500 people are due to be lose their jobs at the IRS by the end of the week. If the goal of these spending cuts across the federal government has been to reduce the debt, why impose some of the deepest cuts we've seen so far at the agency responsible for raising revenue for the federal government?
Well, I think our objective is to make sure that the employees that we pay are being productive and effective. And
ROI.
There are many, more than 100,000 people working to collect taxes, and not all of them are fully occupied. And the Treasury Secretary is studying the matter and feels like 3,500 is a small number, and probably can get bigger, especially as we improve the IT at the IRS. And so I think that it's absolutely something that is on the table for good reasons. And the point is that don't just talk about the IRS, talk about all of government. That there are so many places. I live in D.C. You maybe live in D.C. where nobody's going to the buildings. People aren't commuting because nobody's doing their job. We look back and we see that there are all these people doing 2 jobs while they're getting a government payroll on the payroll. So the point is we're fixing that, and the IRS is a small part of that picture.
IRS is just one cog in the wheel, and there are many more to go. So we'll continue to keep our eye on this. This is a precarious one because this judge is Amir H. Ali. We'll await his ruling. We'll see if he holds somebody in contempt or issues an order to show cause. Get on down here and explain yourself. We'll see what's happening. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now, we're not done yet. Let's talk about a possible impeachment effort that is underway right now. The DC judges are a disaster. Lots of questions about what we can do about that. One representative called Eli Crane saying it's time to file articles of impeachment. He has now drafted one set of those that he plans to officially file on Friday. Representative Eli Crane, proudly serving here in Arizona, former Navy SEAL. And here is what his solution is to get rid of some of these hack corrupt judges, mostly centralized in Washington, D.C. Here's the resolution: impeaching Paul Adam Engelmeyer, United States District Court judge, for high crimes and misdemeanors. And we've already seen conversations about this and had those here about what is the impeachment standard. What if there is just not good behavior, right? During good behavior, they hold office. What if it drops below that? It's bad behavior. This is high crimes and misdemeanors, what he's using here. He says, resolved that Paul Adam Engelmeyer, and by the way, you don't actually need to impeach somebody for this to resonate throughout all of the rest of the judiciary. He's the United States District Court judge for the Southern District of New York, one of the most corrupt districts in the country, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following article of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate. Articles of impeachment by the House of Representatives of the United States brought against Paul Adam Engelmeyer for the following. Article 1, abuse of power. They say Judge Paul Engelmeyer, in violation of his oath, did knowingly and willfully use his judicial position to advance personal interests and political gain. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives, quote, shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that civil officers of the United States, including federal judges, are subject to impeachment and removal. And further, the separation of powers under the Constitution grants the president broad authority over the executive branch, including direct control and access to the departments as part of his role in ensuring the administration of laws and policies of the United States. In his conduct in the office as judge, in which he violated his oath of the Constitution, and duty in his conduct in which he violated his oath of the Constitution and duty of impartiality, Judge Paul Engelmeyer has abused the powers of his judicial authority, having engaged in actions that prioritize personal and political affiliations over the duty of impartiality owed to the public and litigants as followed. Here's how he did that. Judge Engelmeyer restrained President Trump and the Treasury Secretary Bessent from granting access to any Treasury record, to any department record at all. He also restrained Trump and Bessent, okay, and they, by the way, these are their departments. The American people elected Trump to access these records via his team and his administration. Same thing with Scott Bessent. They also, this judge, restrained Trump and Bessent from granting access to political appointees, special government employees, or the Doge team. Now, this conduct has resulted in apparent bias and favoritism, representing an abuse of judicial power, and is detrimental to the orderly functioning of the judiciary. Using the powers of his high office, Engelmeyer interfered with the will of the people. And so in doing so, Judge Engelmeyer used the powers of his position to engage in actions that overstep his judicial authority. Put a little H right there, just to be clear. And by making a political decision outside the scope of his legal duties, he compromised the impartiality of our judicial system. Wherefore, Judge Engelmeyer is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors and should be removed from office. So that is what we expect to have filed by Representative Eli Crane from Arizona. Shout out, Mr. Crane, for putting some pressure out there on the judiciary. We'll see where it goes. Obviously, it is a tall order to get anybody impeached in this country because it requires 2/3 of the Senate. We only have like 51% of the Senate, so it's not near 2/3. And of course, the Democrats would love this dude. They're like, oh no, he's very fair and impartial. He's a great judge. All right, so that happened there. Now, simultaneously, we've got another appeal that's happening. So President Trump is appealing another ridiculous order, and this one comes in the case of Kathy Harris versus Scott Bessent. This is a very similar fact pattern to what we've seen with Hampton Dellinger. Hampton Dellinger, of course, the special counsel that Trump fired from the office of the special counsel, that Judge Amy Berman Jackson, also out of the District of Columbia, shoved him right back into power. And Trump is now taking that to the Supreme Court. This one might go that same direction because it's another woman, Kathy A. Harris, who was fired, who this judge shoved back into power. This judge says, you know, this woman was appointed to the merit board and her term was going to expire in 2028, but then Trump came in and fired her. So she sued, saying her termination violated the law. She moved for a restraining order, and the court grants the motion for a preliminary injunction. Okay, so she gets back shoved into the federal government. Now, Joe Biden nominated this person June 24th, 2021. She was confirmed by the Senate and was sworn in. But then she got an email from Trump. On behalf of President Trump, I am writing to inform you that your position is terminated, effective immediately. Thank you for your service. Get the hell out. Then she sued, claiming he can't do this, and the judge came back down in this opinion. Says she's going to win. You can't fire her. Humphrey's executor, which is an unconstitutional case which every judge has been exploiting to come to this conclusion, she mirrors Amy Berman Jackson's opinion and says, ultimately, we fast forward to the end, that this woman has to be back in power. So that happened. Now Trump is appealing that decision. So let's just take a look at this conclusion. She says, it is now granted that Kathy A. Harris goes back in the government. She can continue to serve at the chairman as the MSPB. That's a very gendered term. I wonder if she's okay with that. Says, all of these other people are stopped and enjoined from removing her. You cannot remove her. She can file any motion for a preliminary injunction, come back here in March and meet and confer, signed by Rudolph Contreras. Okay, Rudolph Contreras. Now, Trump is appealing that. Happened very quickly, says, now we're taking this up to the Court of Appeals, signed by Madeline M. McMahon. And here is the response to that filing. They say, look, on February 10th, the president used his lawful authority under Article 2 and fired Kathy Harris from her position. Nonetheless, she sued and then got a temporary restraining order. The court granted her motion and stated that we are enjoined from removing her from office or even treating her as having been removed. So when you see her in the office, you have to be like, oh, hi, Kathy, great to see you. Even though everybody knows she's fired. Says this relief is an extraordinary intrusion into the president's authority. And so accordingly, we have now appealed this court's order and plan to seek a stay pending the appeal. But out of an abundance of caution, we are moving this court for a temporary stay. We don't think that you're going to grant it, but we're asking for it. She has fallen far short of the required strong showing that she's going to succeed. The president runs the executive branch, not her. Everyone knows that. The president has the power to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And for nearly a century, the Supreme Court has reaffirmed this power. And also the balance of equities favor the president as well. Shoving her back in is an extraordinary act. It is a significant intrusion on the power of the presidency. He is being prevented from having his own person run that branch, and you're damaging our democratic system by violating the separation of powers. Now, conversely, she's not even explained how she's going to suffer irreparable harm. Her removal deprives her of her employment, but that's not irreparable. Go get another job. Money's fungible. Go find another job. The traditional remedy is to sue for back pay, not interim reinstatement. And this injunction is unconstitutional. And so for the reasons stated above, please grant a stay while our appeal makes its way up in and through the DC circuit. So this is where this one will go. This judge, Rudolph Contreras, and we'll keep our eye on that one as well. But many people want these reforms to happen. They want DOJ and these changes, new heads of agencies, to occur because they are bringing progress to the country. This came over from Western Lensman on X. Secretary Duffy was talking about transportation and air traffic control and how they want Elon to come over and lend a hand.
I want government to move like lives are at stake.
At the speed of Trump. I want them to move the speed of SpaceX.
He sought the help of Elon Musk, who founded the aerospace company SpaceX, and whose team toured the FAA's command center outside Washington this week.
Why wouldn't I ask Elon Musk? Why wouldn't I ask some of the best minds in the world to come in and offer us advice on how they think we can improve the system?
How do you avoid the potential conflicts of interest with Elon Musk?
I don't want to see conflicts of interest. So he was talking to air traffic controllers, didn't plug into the system, but looked at the terminals that they use, the technology that they use, asked them, had a back and forth about what works well for you, what doesn't work well.
You see it less as a DOJ project and more as like Elon Musk a la Accenture or a consultant sort of.
Well, when you think of DOJ or America thinks of DOJ, they think of cutting, right? We're in the space of building. I want advice on how do we build out better infrastructure, and we're going to spend money to do that.
But that will also require Congress to act.
They will spend money. So as we mentioned, we're in the cutting phase right now. We're not in the bulking phase. Still got some more cutting to do. Going to get a six-pack on this government. Then we'll bulk back up and it will be jacked So Rapid Response shared this. Caroline Levitt is giving us a history lesson on the 1 month anniversary of President Trump's return. It has now been 1 month. It is the 20th of February, and we remember what a beautiful and glorious day that was. Here is Caroline bringing home the beautiful memories of winning.
Today marks 1 month of President Trump's return to the Oval Office, and there is no denying this administration is off to a historic start. The president has already signed 73 executive orders. That is more than double the number signed by Joe Biden and more than quadruple the number signed by Barack Obama over the same period. These executive orders have ended burdensome regulations, sealed the border, unleashed our domestic energy sector, eliminated divisive DEI from our federal government, stopped the weaponization of government, cut waste, fraud, and abuse, reinstituted America First trade and foreign policies, and ultimately restored common sense. The president also signed the Laken-Riley Act into law, which ensures ICE will detain illegal aliens arrested or charged with theft or violence. As of today, the Senate has already confirmed 18 cabinet-level nominees, which is more than at this point under the Obama administration in 2009, and more than double the pace of the Biden administration in 2021. And today, we expect Kash Patel to be confirmed as the next director of the FBI. We are proud to announce that the president will host his first official cabinet meeting here at the White House next Wednesday, February 26th. In just 4 weeks, President Trump has already hosted the leaders of Israel, Japan, Jordan, and India. And next Monday, the president will host France's President Emmanuel Macron. And on Thursday, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit the White House as well.
All right, so Caroline Levitt giving us a trip down memory lane of all the winning, and more winning will continue, including a cut of spending and a reduction of inflation by the explosion of supply. So all of the good stuff that we're seeing here with Doge, just the beginning. Here is the Economic Council Director called Kevin Hassett explaining what's coming next.
First thing is that the president has told us to prioritize fighting inflation. And he had to do that because, as you know, President Biden let inflation get completely out of control. And he did it with policies that made no sense. They made no sense. You know, a lot of times people say to us, our friends, the journalists, why are you doing that? But I like to think, why did they do that? Why did they spend so much money? And then why did the Fed print so much money so that we had inflation as high as we've ever seen since Jimmy Carter?
Democrats.
So why did they do that? So we're addressing inflation. We didn't have to address it in the first term because it was always in the ones, almost always. But we're going to get it back there. And how are we doing it? Well, we're doing it with a plan that President Trump and I and others have talked about in the Oval that involves like every level of fighting inflation. First, the macroeconomic level. We're cutting spending. We're cutting spending in negotiations with people on the Hill. We're cutting spending with the advice of our IT consultant, Elon Musk. And then we're also looking into supply side things, like restoring Trump's tax cuts, maybe even expensing new factories so that there's an explosion of supply. If you have an explosion of supply and a reduction in government demand, then inflation goes way down. And then one of the things that you want to say is, well, when are you going to see it? Well, the first thing that you'll see when the markets believe that we're going to get inflation under control is that the 10-year Treasury rate goes down, because that's how they think about future expected inflation. And so we're still going to see some memory of Biden's inflation. It's not going to go away in a month. But the 10-year Treasury before the last consumer price index had dropped about 40 basis points. 40 basis points because markets were optimistic about our ability to fight inflation. 40 basis points is kind of not a fun thing to say. Economists talk that way. I apologize. Yeah. But the way to think about it is, for a typical mortgage, if that affects the mortgage rate, then it's going to save a typical family buying a house about $1,000 a year. And that's just in our first month.
Amazing. So that guy sounds really smart. I'm glad he's in charge versus whoever the Biden administration had in there can't even remember, because the economy wasn't even anything they thought about, unless it was Ukraine's economy or some other foreign country's, I guess, transgender economy. Then they spend a lot of money on that. But Kevin Hassett, sounds like we got a plan for more winning. We're going to be here and we're going to cover it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, so if you're just joining us, my friends, We had a great stream today. We had Kash Patel we talked a little bit about the Democrat reaction to that. And we're excited to see what Kash does next. Hopefully tomorrow we get the Epstein list and Liz Cheney gets indicted. We'll see if that happens. A boy can dream. We also then talked about what is happening in this contempt attempt by the left, the AIDS doctors, these two, AIDS Doctor Coalition here and the Global Health Council of AIDS, whatever. They were suing and they demanded that President Trump and the administration be held in civil contempt and be ordered to turn on all the rest of the money. So we read through their complaint, their demand for this emergency hearing, and Trump's response, which I thought was quite beautiful, and articulated how they are in total compliance with the TROs. Even though the TROs are stepping outside of the judicially prescribed constitutional bounds, they are still finding independent sources to rescind and cancel the funds, as is perfectly within their power. Congress even gave them that authority. Great clips here from Stephen Miller and from Kevin Hassett. And then, of course, we talked about the impeachment document. Should we be impeaching these judges? Can they be impeached? I think it's a tall order to get anybody impeached in the Senate just because of the margins. But I do think that if you even just go through the impeachment process and get them impeached in the House, not necessarily convicted in the Senate, that will carry some great weight. So we talked about that, read through another ridiculous judicial order from Rudolph Contreras, again, out of Washington, D.C., who is usurping Trump's executive power, shoving other inappropriate people back into the administration. Trump is already appealing this issue at the Supreme Court right now. So this will probably, once that gets solved, that will probably solve this one as well. They may even consolidate these at some point down the line. We'll see. But we read through it. We read through Trump's appeal and the response to the request for stay. Heard a little bit more from the Secretary of Transportation and Caroline Leavitt. And happy 1 month anniversary, my friends. It's been a hell of a month. Been having a ton of fun with you. Really glad to be spending this historic time together. Now let's hear from you and see what you say about all of this and more. And then, of course, we're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to debrief with locals for a bit. We'd love to have you join us and become a membo. We'll see you in the morning streams. For our membos, you can join on YouTube, click the join button, or join on locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'll see you tomorrow morning. All right, now let's see who is here on the day. It is almost a Friday, and it's going to be a good Friday. We're looking forward to it. What's up, Ollie? Hey, gifted one membo in the house. Sixthova is in the house. What's up, Ollie? Welcome, Sixthola. We got Voice of the People says, congrats, Kash. Please get to work. I expect charges up to and including first name tree, last name son for our government officials. That will bring back trust and faith. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but they were ultra freaked about Kash, which means we're excited for what he can do. Whoopsie daisy on locals says Kash is king. Can't wait to see what happens next. I know he had a lot of plans in his book. We're looking forward to it. Stephen Mosher says Congress can restrict the jurisdiction of the DC circuit. Again, that would require Congress with some stones, and they don't have any. They just kind of sit around and spend money. Stephen says, don't suggest violent or stupid solutions. It's great advice. Yeah, I encourage and repost that, affirm that. Yeah, no violence. Don't need any stupid solutions. We got plenty of stupid politicians, so we want smart solutions, and violence is never the answer. Thank you, Stephen. Chubby Stubby says, thoroughly shocked by Mitch and his yes vote. He must have had a talking to. Yeah, what happened with Mitch? Somebody sat him down and like, you're voting yes and you're resigning and you're not running again. So just get out there and do it. Mitch was like, yes, okay. I don't know what happened to Mitch, man, but somebody got a talking to. He's in trouble. He's grounded. Waldo, good to see you, Waldo. Angela Phylan got gifted a membo, courtesy of Waldo. Great to see you, Angela. Good to see you. We'll see you tomorrow morning. One Gravy 2 says, did Mitch McConnell make a deal to get out untouched in exchange for cash to get confirmed? Suspicious that when he retires, it all falls into place. Yeah, there's another one. We were watching it this morning and we're like, yeah, what's going on here? Very strange. We watched it live, One Gravy too. It was interesting. Yeah, what's up with Mitch? I said maybe he fell again and hit his head a little too hard. Knocked something loose. Something back into place during that second fall. Think, oh yeah, conservatism. It's like, nobody thought to just bang the side of the TV, like a decade ago. He could have been much better. So just, take it out, blowing it, put it back in again. All right, what's up, Knox? Happy Thursday, all. What is the deal with Dems and gold bars? Fort Knox better not be empty. Yeah, we read this one this morning too, Knox. We may have missed you this morning. But yeah, we read through that one. That came over from Free Beacon, I believe it was. Yeah, Free Beacon posted that story. Good investigation. Stacey Abrams ran an organization that had like $100 to their name. Then they got $2 billion. Okay, totally corrupt. And we made the point, these people even be relevant if they didn't have our billions of dollars propping them up? They're like, they have like books and tours and like successful things. Maybe it's not real at all. They're just all fake. Like the whole party is just fake because they got money from the government, right? They're just fake people. One old guy's opinion says, what high crimes and misdemeanors can they impeach him with? Well, he said abuse of office, right? Abuse of public office, basically. More picks and fair dust charges by the Looney Tune Democrats. Says Schiff and the losers put on a free open air concert outside the FBI and nobody showed up. Somebody should have put like a hat out there with like tips in it. So you could go like drop a quarter in there for these guys. Are you guys out here? Did you guys lose your jobs? Oh, here you go. Have $1. Schiff, go get a coffee. You look like you're frozen. Knox, is Schiff wearing a KJP overcoat left behind under a desk or something? I know, he looked frozen, didn't he? Poor Adam Schiff, he's like frozen. Look at his face, it's like all red. And I like it. I like this one because it looks like, yeah, it looks like he's frozen. Like he's standing there kind of like with his arms tucked in. Here, let me move my fat head out of the way. Like with his arms tucked in. Like when your shoulders are pulled back a little bit, you're like frozen, right? Like he looks cold right there, doesn't he? Poor Schiff. He's like, but we have to stop Kash. So I'm doing it for you, America. Maria Colin. What's up, Maria? Thank you for becoming a supporter. We'll see you tomorrow morning on the members only stream. Wendy W. Happy over 1 year anniversary. Says, so afraid. So afraid. Now look into them all. He will. One old guy says, impeach, indict, and perjury. Many ways to get it done. That's a tenant number 1. Hey, it's the Munkets. What's up, Tony? Hey, Munkets. Bringing in 20 new friends for us. What's up? Seymour Yo is here. Vince P. We got Kimberly Gabaldon. We got Archlord Dune Rider, Mercy S. Promises Made and Kept. Graham M. Chonky Ducky. Juanis Jernigan. We got Lloyd Burton, Matthew Harris, Ron Jones, James Moore, Garrett House, Tom Niemueller, Slugs is here, God Before Money, good one, Justin H. Hampton, and Mitchell Book gifted membos, 20 new membos, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets in the house. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing them in and welcome new friends. One old guy says, when all this gets to SCOTUS, they will either enforce the U.S. Constitution or turn it into a roll of toilet paper for loony libs to wipe their butts. Yeah, it's true. Hopefully it's the former. What's up, Sam in Texas? Thank you, Sam, for bringing in 5 new friends. Tony Don't Care No More is coming in. I can understand what that. Pen 1S is here. Good to see you, Pen 1S. We got D.R. Agnan O'Hara. What's up, D.R. Agnan O'Hara? Dead Already and P. Powerful gifted membos courtesy of Sam in Texas. Great to see everybody. Welcome aboard. Sheila the Pooh. Sheila, 10 membos coming in from you. Thank you, Sheila. Look who's here. Steve Lee, Digital Anon, Coffee and K Dramas. We got Dave Godkin. We got Heath Lewis, Terry Hurst, Z&J's Mama, LB, Otto Hoax, and 3 gifted membos courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Hey, what's up? Give me more. Brought in 5 membos. Harmony Richmond, Cyrus. We got Brendan, Angela Hope, and Montana Bow Lady gifted membos. Thank you more here for doing that. Man, we're going to have so many new friends tomorrow. Maynard says, afuera, salt, 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 salt. Tons of salt from the left. It's like just a salt mill mine. Hey, Kay Gill. What's up, Kay Gill? See you tomorrow. Thank you for becoming a supporter, supporting our work. Gloria B is bringing in Xavier Logistics. Xavier Logistics in the house. Thank you, Gloria. This old guy says, okay, let's see if I understand exactly what went on here. Trump ordered a pause in spending while the administration analyzed the aid programs. Plaintiffs, the lawsuit people, demanded that the court issue a TRO and compel the administration to continue paying aid. And it's the AIDS doctors also getting aid, right? The administration determines that there are termination provisions in the contract. The administration cancels the contract altogether. Sounds like the contract got canceled. Yeah. You got it, this old guy. They don't get it for some reason. They're just like, but AIDS. All right, well, that's not a real good legal argument. So they're just screaming about contempt now. We'll see. Thank you, this old guy. Good to see you. Hey, Rick Donner. CPAC 2020 versus CPAC 2025. Liz Cheney spoke at CPAC 2020. That's incredible. Then just like a couple months later, she was ransacking Trump. Bonnie says the contempt case might have some teeth if the programs they cut had applied for a waiver and had been denied, but they didn't. But no, they think it's their money and they want it all, every last cent, and they want it now. It's my money and I need it now. If I was the judge, I'd ask for a list from them, a list of specific awards that weren't funded. Yeah, and I think the judge is going to have to like find something that they canceled based on the order, the executive order or the memo that they didn't try to reinstitute, that they didn't have alternative authority to cancel. So like there was a subset of cases that if they worked on, the judge, you didn't do that fast enough or you should have done this. So there might be something in there. Like the judge might find, well, you should have done this way. But by and large, they're following the order. Great to see you, Bonnie. Hope you're well. Knox says, lest we forget, Fauci was the original AIDS doctor and the bad guy in the movie Dallas Buyers Club. They all need to be defunded. That's for sure. And a lot more for Fauci. Will Crump says SCOTUS must take rapid and decisive action to end this and all future obstructive and unconstitutional restraining orders and injunctions. Yeah, we'll see if we get something tomorrow. We'll see. We've got, I think, a full set of briefs in that have hit on the Hampton Dellinger case, so maybe we'll get some action from them soon. Hey, thank you for that one. Michael Cornelio in the house. Appreciate this nice dono, Michael. Says, love how you explain these documents in an easy to understand way. Great work. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you saying that. Thanks for coming by and joining us on them. It's very important stuff that's happening, and I'm glad that we get to unpack it together. Couldn't do it without you, my man. Thank you for the dono. Hey, SX my D do tube. All right. Thank you for that one. What? All right. Hey, thank you for the dono from DoTube in the house. And Shane saying thank you too. Aaron Stevens. What's up, Aaron Stevens? Welcome aboard. We'll see you tomorrow on the members only stream. Hey, Off Label Podcast is going to be streaming tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is coming up soon. Says, keep the party going after Rob. Come and join them. They're not family friendly, so they're going to be F&A and mother, son of a B, and all the things over there. So be careful. It won't be that bad. Thank you for that, Off Label. Your third super chat. Wow, you're so new to YouTube. Thank you. Just kidding. Hey, what's up? George Garbanzo. Maybe we can just sell New York to Canada, be done with all this, or trade them to Denmark for Greenland. Yeah, it's a good question. Not real sure what to do with New York. It's kind of a weird place. What happened to New York? It's such a weird thing. With Hochul and Adams, and it's weird. Thank you, George, for the dono. Ed, what's up, Ed? Says, can a judge actually impose contempt on a president? I don't know, probably. Can a judge hold Congress in contempt or Congress hold a judge in contempt? So, yeah, I mean, I think he could. I think the president would. It depends on what he's holding him in contempt for. So it's like, if he tried to hold Marco Rubio in contempt, Rubio would say, I'm operating under the authority of the president. The president would make the argument that I am allowed to do this thing. The judge could say, no, you're not, right? Trump could appeal all this to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court could ultimately settle it. And if Trump is by law required to do the thing, right? The Supreme Court could settle that and mandate Trump do the thing. If that, or say that the law is this, that Trump do the thing. Not necessarily that they can make him do it, but just say the law says you have to do that. Then if Trump doesn't do that thing, he's in violation of a judicial order, and the Congress can then impeach him for ignoring the Supreme Court. Would be the more, the more regular method. But like these judges are doing whatever they want. So can they? Yeah. Will it hold up or mean anything? That's a separate story. But they actually didn't name him, right, as well. I keep saying Trump, but they didn't name him specifically. They named Rubio and the agency. So can co-equal separate branches hold one another in contempt? Well, that's the question. Yeah, that's the question. So would the Supreme Court hold a president in contempt? I don't think so. I think they would just issue a finding, an order that this is the way that it is. And they're because they can't go and force anything against the president. And it's about judicial review. They'd say what the law is. So the court would come out, say what the law is, and then if the president overrides that, then the Congress can impeach the president, remove the president for breaking the balance of power. One old guy says, every conservative talking to a Democrat says, if I speak at a constant volume, at one constant pitch, at one constant rhythm, right into your ear, you still won't hear, From one old guy. Says, activist judges are now put on notice. Follow the law or else. Off-label podcast. What's up? Nice labels, off-label. Gifting 10 new membos in here. We got Reaper 294. What's up? Matt, Panda Gaming, Last of Yahoos, Misfit News, Francis Chartrand, April M, Stan is here, Random, and Alicia G. Gifted membos courtesy of Off-Label Podcast, streaming later tonight. Check them out. Tony Hay Munkett says, hey, it's been a while since I heard you say this. I hope he's doing well. Dolphin Fan is the man in the house. Where is Dolphin Fan? I notice when you don't come back here, everybody. I notice, all of you. Where is Dolphin Fan? I've noticed he's gone missing. He better not be watching some other live streamer, I'll tell you what. Philip Coggins. Aren't all these removal of officers, TROs, essentially Marbury versus Madison? Yeah, that's a very apropos comment, Philip. Yeah, Marbury versus Madison is like one of the most foundational cases in American law. And it was set at the very early outset of this, and it basically establishes judicial review, exactly what I was talking about. The idea that the court says what the law is, but they can't really enforce or mandate certain things. They just say, is this constitutional or not? So we're waiting for that to happen, right? We're waiting for the courts to say whether these TROs are constitutional or not. We're ultimately working our way through the process. It's very slow, but we're going through it. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, it's a very important case, and I think kind of similar facts about appointments and whether Congress can mandate certain appointments, stuff like that. Thank you, Philip. Says Mini Wheat, says, this came in while you were reading the motions. Is there anything that can be done to stop these people and their TROs? They should not be allowed to get away with this. So yeah, we're working on what can be done to get away with it, to stop it. Basically, Trump is appealing it. And we just talked about that appeal, I think, in the AIDS vaccine case. So thank you for that one, Mini Wheat. We got Wookie Elnil. 19 months as a membo, says more like 29. I know sometimes YouTube can be wonky about keeping those months in count. Thanks for all you do, Rob G. Thank you, Wookie Elnil. Thanks for being here for 19 months, my man. Really a long time together. Thank you for supporting us all this way. We're grateful for it. We're grateful for it. One old guy says, Kathy Harris's office in the non-binary restroom. She will have plenty of water for her coffee pot. We will supply a small card table and an iPad for her productivity. She will be able to access her timesheet. We're not locking her out of anything. Thank you, one old guy. Complying with the judge's order. Michael Cornelio, great to see you as a membo. We'll see you tomorrow on the members only stream in the morning, 11 Eastern. Buddy Love, Buddy 305 Love in the house. Did you apply for the social media White House press pass? I did. I haven't heard back on that yet, but Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I just got one question. When is Liz Cheney being indicted? Anyone know? Roger says, not talking about RAS or PC for detainments or arrests. Others should be left alone. Worried about racial profiling. Oh, it's from this morning. This morning we were talking about, I think Roger was asking, well, why are people mad at the AOC is educating illegal aliens about how to avoid being deported? And, there's a constitutional argument that, well, he's saying, not talking about reasonable suspicion or probable cause for detainments. He says others should be left alone. I'm worried about racial profiling. Okay, so that was a follow-up to this morning's comment. Where do you draw the line? Where do you want the police investigating? Where should the police not be investigating? And more, our conversation was mostly about kind of the default status of people, and why should people who break the law get the benefits of our Constitution when they openly violated the law in order to exploit the Constitution? On the converse of that, right, you don't want police kicking doors in because you will have them, without good cause to do that. Like, they should still follow reasonable suspicion, probable cause. They should still follow the appropriate methods and mechanisms to detain someone. I think, Roger, it's also distasteful to have a congresswoman doing it who kind of swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Like, if a criminal defense attorney is doing it, that's a different audience or a different deliverer. So I think it's also distasteful because she did it. But as a policy matter, like there's a constitutional component to the conversation and a policy component. From a policy perspective, you say these people have come into the country illegally, knowing it is illegal, and then they want to get here and claim the benefits. It doesn't matter if it's a constitutional benefit to not be arrested, or if it is a benefit of a hotel room in New York, right? It's either way. Even if the Constitution says, maybe we should put some nice speed bumps in place before the cops come in and arrest somebody with like reasonable suspicion and probable cause, search warrants, arrest warrants, and so on. It's still distasteful that they get those benefits after having openly flouted the sovereignty of the nation. That's kind of the policy reaction to that. And I empathize with that, even as a criminal defense attorney. It's like, all right, I know. But at the one side, you also want to make sure the police are not over encroaching. Hey, J-Mac. Thank you, J-Mac. Says, thank you, Rob. I learned so much from you and your fam here. Make America great again. Me too, J-Mac. I really do. I learned a ton from you guys. You guys help to point me in the right direction, nudge me when we're off track, get us back on track. And we go through a lot together. It's really a ton of fun. So I feel like it's a fire hose of information and couldn't be able to do it without you. Thank you for supporting us and being here. We're just warming up, baby. We just got 1 month down, many more months to go. Hey, Ed is here. Thank you, Ed, for bringing in 10 more membos. Look who's here. Christopher Bell, what's up? Michael Lasercheck. It's a pretty cool name, Michael. Wayne Kin, we got Ramazan, John Spitzley, Reality is Hard, Miss Vicky May, Robert Lane, Mick Bradley, and Purple Lady Wenyo in the house, courtesy of Ed. 10 new friends. We'll see you tomorrow. We got this one from Knox. Says, here's more good news. Says, CDC promotion, RFK is going to be, HHS orders the CDC to stop the jab ads. Saying RFK wants the message to focus on informed consent. That was fast. Great news. Good. So that propaganda is coming to a close. All right. This is a nice GIF here. Thank you for this one, Donut. In Charles, we trust. Charles Fritz. Thank you, Charles, for being a membo, bringing in 5 more. Bob Gable. What's up, Scooter? In the end, God wins is here. Girl of the Valley. And Ellen Brunetto. Gifted membos, courtesy of Charles Fritz. Great to see you, Charles. Thank you for being here and bringing in 5 new friends. This old guy says, I'm going to repeat my idea regarding the DC circuit. I originally believed that the DC circuit needed to be abolished, with the DC cases being redistributed to other courts. However, I now believe there is a general issue with the liberal leanings of the judges in the circuit. Rather than abolish it, we should simply move it along with the judges to Garden City, Kansas, and rename it from the DC circuit to the GC circuit. I like it. Although it's kind of like a punishment for Kansas, right? Like Garden City people have to deal with that. But thank you, Kansas, for taking all of our corrupt judges. I think they'll whip them into shape. Old lady says, KASH started figuring out Should start with figuring out what happened in Butler. Yeah, and what happened with the deleted body that they burned immediately as soon as the congressional, remember that congressional committee that they formed? Like, here, just give the peasants a committee and they can come out. Mike Johnson will lead on it. Whatever. Hey, Deluxe Knight is here. Says, I have missed the last 36 hours. Catching up my absences. Taco Tuesday went awesome. Hope everyone went with lots of happy mouths. Hope everyone, including you, Rob, have had a beautiful 2 days. Those look like some great tacos, man. You made those up yourself? Wow, incredible. Man, I love some good tacos. And it's Taco Tuesday. Glad you're back, Deluxe Knight. Thank you for sharing that with us. Deliciousness. You can whip up some tacos, it looks like. Hey, Londo. Hey, what's up, Londo? Says, Rob, request for prayers for our friend Lois, a.k.a. Timov. Hints of something wrong, undergoing a stat brain MRI in the morning. Praying there is no new cancer. Londo, Lois, Timov, our friends, sending good love your way and praying for a good outcome for just a little, weird thing that happened. Nothing more serious than that. You'll get some good news tomorrow after the MRI. Thank you, Londo. Sending love your way. Liz, I'm confused. Imagine that. But will those people who have received the funds illegally be charged and marched off to prison? Well, as far as they're concerned, it's lawful money, right? They say, no, we were entitled to these grants. Some other bureaucrat gave it to somebody. It would require an investigation, I think, of those organizations if they received those funds fraudulently. Like if they executed a contract with the government, that contract explicitly said you got to do these things. They don't do those things. Those money went to Stacey Abrams or Democrats or whatever, right? Maybe they could say those are fraud cases and charge them with fraud and then investigate them accordingly. But they'd have to look at each case individually on a case-by-case basis, and then they'd have to go charge those people, prosecute those people. It's a ton of money to do that, and you're not getting the money back anyways, right? Because they've spent it. So we'd rather just avoid all of that, just not hand out money that doesn't serve the American people, rather than have to go independently investigate every nook and cranny for criminality. Thank you, Liz, for the nice dono. Hopefully that makes sense. Venus, if you believe in seeking truth, comment on this video, subscribe to this, turn on your post notifications, share this live stream with everybody in your family, every single family member and friend you've ever met or known, and also put it on your social media. Thank you, Venus Gonzalez. Excellent advice. Chad Brummett, 6 months as a membo, says 6 of one, half a dozen of another. From Chad Brummett, 6 months as a membo, 3 more to go for a full baby. Bill Dozer says, and I'll be live at 9:30 Central. What's up, Bill? Streaming too? I call my show the Dozer Den. That sounds fun. Become an extra special dozer and follow Bill Dozer. I talk about stuff and things. Man, I love stuff and things. That sounds fun. Thank you, Bill. That's on Rumble. Give that one a check, my friends. The Dozer Den. Tony Haymunkets saying, there's good people in every state. We have to remember that, and we have to fight for them. God bless America. That is true. That is true. We don't want to be too sore of winners. We're still winning a lot right now, and we still have to win, and we still have to make sure that the Democrat litigators and obstructionists are brought to the proper volume. But we also, we want what's best for all of America. Even the Democrats who don't know better for themselves, right? We're going to bring prosperity to the whole country. They'll be better for it. Then they'll vote Republican. Hey, what's up, Roger? Fawn Vergne. Whoop! Thank you, Roger. Whoop, whoop. That is a Nintendo, I think Super Nintendo controller, which was a very nice system. And I liked Super Mario Brothers a lot. What's up, Roger Fawn Vergne in the house? Thanks for the dono. Lady I says, the perfect comeback for every complaint they make and every case they file, saying Trump does not have the ability to reappropriate obligated funds, or that they have to spend all of the money is this. Biden's refusal to continue building the wall and even sold the supplies, right? Biden didn't use the funds. Now Trump doesn't have to either. Deluxe says, I found at least one of the membership donos I have sent. Locals added a second membership to my account. I've had trouble to figure out how to correct that issue, though. Oh, you know what I think might happen? Sometimes Deluxe Night is like you create 2 accounts, maybe like you think you logged in with one email, then you log in with another. Did I use that email? Log in with another one. So I would just cancel one of them and then just stick with the other one. So if you got 2 logins, maybe cancel one and then stick with the other. Thank you, Deluxe Night. It's annoying. Hey, Big Balls says, very happy to be here with you all. Big Balls just joined over on our locals. He's wondering where you are too. I have been enjoying your content daily for quite some time now. This is the best program on Rumble. Thanks, Rob, for all you do. Big Balls. Man, that's such a nice thing for you to say. Really means a lot to me. Thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing in the most perfect name to our community that I get to say repeatedly on the show. Hey, what's up, Tony? Hey, Muckets. Prayers for old drill sergeant. I haven't seen him either for quite a while. Yeah, where the heck is old drill sergeant? I don't know. Anywhere. God bless you, my friend. I hope you're doing okay. Me too, old drill sergeant. You know, they're probably hanging out with Dolphin Fan. Dolphin Fan is the man. And old drill sergeant. Probably watching some other streamer betraying us. Hey, Sharpie Guy says, this morning, I was trying to inform you about how corrupt Colorado politics are. Hickenlooper, buying Gaetano restaurants and so, but you didn't have enough info to connect the dots. I was raised in North Denver, and it was predominantly Italians. Oh, yeah, because you said Italians, and I said Italians. Totally. For Hickenlooper to own the Gaetano restaurant indicates he's beholden to scary people. My friends were offspring and a cut above the rift, much like the Kennedys, and then John F. Bobby. It's complicated, but I'm a happy Texan today. Blessings, y'all. Yeah, you don't want to be involved with the mob. Glad you're out of there, Sharpie Guy. Texas is safer. Hey, James Anderson. Rob, you got a Traeger? You know, I know a guy. Like a Traeger grill? No, I don't. Those are expensive. I do have a grill, but Traeger was like, you know, that's like Stacey Abrams money. I don't have $2 billion, you know. NY says, 10 plus years ago, I was on an IRB that was giving oversight for medical research. The HVTN 505 was one of the trials we were assigned. It was a failure. The fact that it's still going is incredible. It was shut down as far as I know. What a grift. Those HIV vaccine researchers have some explaining to do. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's all, you know, yes. Because you can't ever take away money from the AIDS kids. Like, ever. You're going to take away money from AIDS kids in Africa? No, you're right. How much do they need? Sergeant Willie. What's up, Sergeant Willie? 20 months as a membo. That is amazing. Thank you, Sergeant Willie, over 2 babies. Glad to have you. Deluxe Knight says, my whole family refuses to eat at the taco trucks ever since I figured out my recipe 5 years ago. Kids have been asking me to create at least a dad's cookbook for them. Hey, Deluxe, you know, we are overdue on my mom's recipes. My mom had a knee replacement, but she's delinquent on her providing of recipes for our Membo community. So we should start a little cookbook. You guys love recipes, by the way. I know that because I can see it in the analytics. It says often, these are other things your audience watches. And one of them is, not always, but it pops up. It's like 30-minute recipes. It's like, man, it's like we're beating the crap out of the deep state and cooking delicious food. So what a great community and life this is, isn't it? So I'm into it. Hey, Stephen Mosher says, remove DC's jurisdiction. Rick D says the 2 accounts issue is now that it could be that too. Now that locals and Rumbles are tied together, the locals asks if you have a Rumble account. If you say yes and sign in with Rumble, it opens an account under your Rumble profile. That is also something that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, we work up an appetite, beating the hell out of these liberals all the time, peacefully and legally and patriotically. All right, so let's take a look. My friends, thank you for sending those in, and we appreciate your amazing love and support. Welcome aboard, new membos. All new membos, we'll see you tomorrow on the members only morning stream in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and it's going to be jamming. So, because it's going to be Friday. Let's see who is saying what's up over on X. A couple comments. Jody, Rob, when you shine that big, beautiful spotlight, don't fall out of the chair again. I still can't unsee that, LOL. God bless you all. Yeah, it happens. Sometimes when we're shining so brightly, we fall out of the chair. What can you say? D. Fraser says, my favorite attorney. Thank you, D. Fraser. I love your work. Great skills with a bit of humor. All of you need to watch this great young man. Thank you, D. Frazier. And also for calling me a young man. Osachi says, boy, some people are blind, deaf, and dumb. The lawfare is so obvious, but I guess it does expose a lot of people that are compromised. And Kevin, what's up, Kevin? Says, been following Rob since Rittenhouse. Go to actually be able to see the lawfare. Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate that, man. That's been a long time. And that's when we first were really getting started. That was like in the early days, baby. And the summer of love and all that stuff. So my friends, if you want to follow us and other watchers in the wild, check it out at Rob Govea ESQ on X. We'd love to see you over there, as would other watchers out there in the wilderness. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. We covered some very good ground, lots of litigation happening. And so we are, of course, going to come back tomorrow to get into it again. Before we do that and wrap things up and kick the camera, we want to, of course, say thank you to our amazing mods and meme smiths, Dog Digger, Janek, K-Bean, Donut Mind Me, Carrie B, Playing Hooky, all modding the fort down for us, keeping things so nice and beautiful. But that, my friends, is going to be it for us on the day. It has been a heck of a stream. Congratulations to Kash. Happy 1 month anniversary of Trump back in the White House. We are going to pause for the evening, but we're coming back tomorrow. It's going to be a Friday, and we're going to need to see you right back here in order to do that appropriately, so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.